Okay.
Hi, and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today, as you can tell, we're not in the garage at work. We're actually in my home garage. I'm working on my son's car. It's a 2015 Hyundai Elantra, and we're going to be changing the front brake pads, brake rotors, and the hardware kit. So, all right, let me bring you in there. I'm going to show you what we're going to do, and then we're going to get this job done and out the door. All right, I just want to mention a couple of things. One, I want to mention that heater that I got the other day, and I finally got to use it in my home garage. This thing is great. When I first came in the garage here today, it was like, I think it was like 39, 40 degrees inside here, and as of right now, it's almost 60 degrees in here, so it works pretty good. So, all right, today we're going to be doing brakes on the car. This is an example of what kind of tools we're going to be needing. We're going to need something like this, which is a driver to actually take those screws out, because sometimes they're really tight. We're going to need a chisel or a metal drift to actually hit these right here. We're going to need a small pry bar like this. That should be sufficient to push the pistons back in, but we'll see how it goes. A small Phillips head screwdriver, a set of ratchets, a very long ratchet handle so you can get that leverage to get these bolts out. We're going to need a file, and of course we're going to need some brake grease to actually grease up the new hardware, which we're going to be installing at the same time, along with new brake pads and a new rotor. And of course, we have our brake cleaner to clean the grease off of the rotor. All right, so first thing we're going to do now is we're going to come into here, and we're going to take out these screws here, because these are the most difficult things to take out. What I always do is take a metal drift like this, put it over the top here, and you hit it fairly firmly to break the rust loose on the threads themselves. Same thing here. And then we're going to take our driver and hit it. And that rotates out the screws. Actually, this one is loose already. So by taking the metal drift and hitting it a couple of times, you break the rust loose on there, and you can usually take them out. Now, if you don't have this driver, you can do it with the screwdriver as well. Once you break it loose, they usually just come right out. And we're going to hold on to these because we are going to reuse these again. So we're going to put them on the side here. Right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come in the back here. This is probably going to be a 14 millimeter bolt right here. We're going to put this onto the bolt like that, and we're going to break it loose. Now we're going to watch this piece right back in here, because when you break this loose, sometimes these slide pins rotate. But we'll see how it goes. Okay, broke loose. Same thing down on the bottoms, the exact same thing on the bottom down here as well. And that broke loose as well. Now, before we go any further, we want to make sure that these slide pins here are working okay. And the way you do that is just unscrew the bolt a little bit like that, and you push it in. And you see how that moves in? So we know this slide pin here is working properly, and we're going to do the exact same thing to the bottom one, just to make sure that the bottom one slides as well, which it does. So now we know both our slide pins are okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our small pry bar like this. I'm going to get it in place, and then I'll bring you in and I'll show you where it's going to go. We're going to slide it in, see right on the side here. We're going to hook it right on here, and we're just going to keep slight pressure on it just to start to push the piston back into the bore. See how it's starting to move a little bit? That piston is pushing back into the bore. Now you see, the caliper is starting to become loose. We'll put our pry bar back in there again and push it in the rest of the way. And now we're going to come into the back. I'll get the screwdriver in here, the pry bar in here first, and then I'll show you where it is. You see how that pry bar is between the brake pad and the rotor? And now what we're going to do is we're going to push that piston all the way back in as far as it can go. And you'll know when you're in there all the way. And now it's in all the way. It doesn't go any further. Okay, so now our piston is pushed all the way back in on our caliper. We checked our slide pins by pushing them in by hand, but you can check it again here just by seeing this. You see how it pushes back and forth? So we know our slide pins are okay. All right, so let's take that caliper off, and then we'll take our mounting bracket out. Okay. Now we'll take out the bolts to hold the caliper to the mounting bracket. You never want to leave a caliper hanging by the hose because you always run that possibility of damaging the hose. Now you see the piston, how it's pushed all the way back in? So most likely we will not have to push this piston back in any further, but we'll see how it goes. So now we're going to take our hook, we're going to put it through here, and we're going to just support our caliper up and out of the way, just like that. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our, most likely 18 millimeter, and right in the back, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, it's a 17 millimeter. Put it on here like this, and that will break the bolt loose. Now before you take this bolt all the way out, you want to just loosen it just a little bit, but then you want to break the bottom bolt loose as well before you take that top bolt out. See what happens if you take that top bolt out and then you try to break the bottom one loose, this bracket will actually move and rotate, making it more difficult. So now that you have them both broken loose, now you can just take them out, and we'll take that bracket off. Now you know I'm using the swivel head ratchet. I like that because it gives you a little bit more room, but it's up to you, personal preference. If you want to use a regular ratchet that's non-swivel, you could do that as well. Alright, now we'll take the bolt out. We are going to use these, so don't lose them. Same thing on the bottom. We're going to take that bolt out as well. And now we'll take our mounting bracket off. We'll just put it right here for 1 second. Our rotor can come right off, just like that. And now, inside here, you see here is a little bit rusty. We're going to come in here with some emery cloth. We're going to clean this up a little bit to get all of that rust off there, which is very important that you get it off. So we're going to clean up this rust on here. Once the rust is cleaned up, then we'll come back and we'll continue. Now that we have this all cleaned up really well over here, we're going to take our new rotor and we're going to match it up with our old rotor to make sure it's the correct one. And the way to do that is just take the new rotor, lay it over the top of the old one like this, and make sure that they line up exactly. Even if it's off a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch, you do have to check it to make sure, because otherwise it'll touch inside the mounting bracket. All right, so the diameter is good. Now we're going to check the height of it, side by side, just to make sure, and the height is perfect also. All right, so our rotor is the correct rotor. So we're going to take this, we'll put this over here for now, and now we're going to take the rotor, we're going to put it on the car, and we're going to put those bolts back in that we previously took out. Now I will tell you this, if these bolts were destroyed or damaged coming out, you can throw them away. You don't have to put these back on, but I always try to use them if I can. All right, so next thing we're going to do now is we're going to get the brake cleaner, and we're going to clean the back of the rotor off a little bit. We are going to get a little bit of grease on it when we put it back together, but on the final step we'll clean that off as well. Okay, so that's nice and clean now. Now you see these holes here where the bolts, the screws go in to hold it in place. You want to make sure you line those up with these holes here where it's going to go back together. So we're just going to put it on here like this. We're just going to screw these in, not real tight. We're just going to screw them in snug for now. See how it's still loose? You never want to tighten it up until you have both of the bolts in. Otherwise, it may be off just that little bit to cause a problem trying to get that second bolt in. And now we can tighten them up. This is actually the same thing as a screwdriver, as this it, but I'm actually just turning it in by hand here. Okay, so now our rotor is put back on. Now we're going to take our brake pads and the mounting bracket. We're just going to come over here and take the pads out. Same thing here. We're going to take off the hardware right here. Like that. And now underneath the hardware, right underneath here, see right inside here, we have to clean off any kind of rust that's in here. We need to clean it off. And the way we're going to get that done is with a file like this or with some more emery cloth. So let me grab the emery cloth. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. Once it's clean, we'll come right back. Okay, we're going to take a little bit of the grease. Now, it does come with it in the package, but they give you such a small amount, it's hard to do the entire brake pad the way it's supposed to be done, and the hardware itself. So, okay. Then we take our new hardware, put it over the top like this, and we take it and push it down in place. Make sure that these little tabs right here are pushed in all the way so that it's flush. Do the same thing over here. Okay, and that's how our hardware goes on. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take out this pin like this, leave it in there, don't take it out. And the same thing over here, we're going to take it out a little bit like this. We're going to take one pin at a time and clean it off. And the reason we're going to do that is, you see this one has rubber on the end of it? I'll show you the other one does not. So we're going to clean this. Now you know I have brake cleaner on this rag here. We're going to take a little bit of the brake lube, put it on here like this. Do not get it down here on this end, because if it goes past over to this end, it's going to be a little bit of a problem trying to get it back in. So put some brake lube on there like that. We can lube the rubber, but you don't want to go past the rubber. All right, and we'll take the pin now, put it back in here, turn it and push it, and that rubber piece has got to snap up over the top of that little boot right there, right on top here. So you push it, and you see it popped over the top. That's the way it's supposed to be. So it slides nice and easy. Then we'll take this one out. See what I was telling you about this one? This one does not have the rubber on it, so you want to make sure you put them back in where you took them out. Whatever hole it came out, it's going to go back in the same one. So we're going to put some lube on here. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. Sometimes too much is going to cause you more of a problem than not having enough. Put it in here like this, turn it, and push it in until that boot pops up. And that's it, the boot popped up. So now that's in good shape. Now, next thing we're going to do now is we're going to take our brake pads and put them back on. But I want to point this out to you. This little piece right here, this is called a disc indicator. And this brake pad here has what's called a disc indicator on it too. The old brake pad that came out, you want to make sure that you take the disc indicator from on the same side as the one that came out. Let me give you an example of what I mean. This one now, you see the difference? The indicator is on this end over here. It's not on this end. This brake pad has the indicator here, so this one is not the right one. This belongs on the other side. This one is the one that belongs on this side. And as you can see, that's the one. All right, so now we're going to take the brake pad itself. I'm going to put it down here. Now the outer brake pad doesn't make a difference. They're both exactly the same. We are going to put a little bit of brake lube on here and here. And then we're just going to spread it around a little bit. Every place that the brake pad is going to touch, you want to make sure you lubricate it. Just like that. All right. Now, one more thing I want to point out to you. This brake pad, you see this round piece right here? That's the part that was actually on the inside of the brake caliper. This is the piece that was actually touching the piston on the caliper. So we know that this one has to be the inner brake pad. And this one will be the outer brake pad because that's the caliper mounts right up on there. All right, so now we're going to do the inside brake pad first. We know that this is the outer brake pad, and this one is the inner brake pad. All right, so we're going to take this now. We're going to take it and put it into the bracket like this. Put it in here and push it in place just like that. We're going to do the exact same thing on this one. Now sometimes these fall out, but not a big deal if it falls out. You just put it right back in again, like this. Okay. Now we'll take the mounting bracket, put it over the top just like this. Put it on. Squeeze your brake pads together so that way they don't slide out. You can see the inner one slid out on me. That's what I was fumbling with. Now we're going to take the bolts that we previously took out. We're going to put it in through the back, and we're going to catch it just till it screws in a couple of threads. Okay, then we're going to stop. We're going to take our other bolt, put it down the bottom, hold your brake pads so they don't fall out, and then we'll make sure we get that one caught in there as well. The reason you want to have both of those caught in there is because if you take the one bolt and you tighten it up tight and the bolt or the bracket is off just a little bit, it's not going to line up properly and you're going to have trouble getting the second bolt in. So make sure you have both of them caught first. I'm going to snug it down till it touches. And I'm going to tighten the bottom one up as well. And now we're going to tighten both of the mounting bolts up tight. There is torque specs on this, but I don't have my torque wrench here with me. It's at work, so that's tight enough. All right, now everything is mounted back up the way it's supposed to be. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to take our caliper back off. We're going to take our hook out that we previously suspended it by. I'm going to turn this so you can see what I'm doing here. But you see this piston here? Look inside. You see all that rust inside there? We're going to make sure that that rust comes out. I will mention that you want to have something on the floor so you don't make a mess on your shop floor or your garage floor. As you can see, I have something down there. Now inside here, we're going to lubricate right inside here where that piston is going to touch up against the new brake pad. Doesn't have to be a lot. Next thing we're going to do, everywhere that the brake pad touches, remember the brake pad that's here is going to touch up against there, like that. So we want to make sure that back here is lubricated as well, there and there, right? The last thing we're going to do now is we're going to take our caliper. Let me just point this out one more second. We're going to take our caliper, take it over the top like this. I want to point this out because I've seen it many, many times in my shop before. This hose, make sure it's straight and it's not twisted, because I've seen them come into my shop already where these are twisted like this and put back on, and that's a no-no because your brakes will not work properly. So make sure that your hose is not twisted. Make sure it's nice and straight like this. Put it over the top like that. Push your slide pin in like this. We're going to do the exact same thing on the bottom. We're going to take our bolt, our 14 millimeter. We're going to catch it loosely. We're not going to tighten it up yet. We're going to catch our other 14 millimeter down at the bottom. And now we can tighten them up all the way in. We're going to grab our 14 millimeter socket. And then we're going to snug these bolts down. Now when you're turning this bolt here and you're trying to snug it down, sometimes this slide pin in here will rotate. If you're trying to tighten this up and that slide pin is rotating, you take a wrench. There's, in this particular case, a 17 millimeter. We put it over the top like this, hold it like that, and then we snug it down, just like that. And we're going to do the same thing on the bottom one. And that's it. All right, so the brakes are done here. So let me just explain a couple of things to you, which is really, really important. Like I said, we are going to clean off this rotor here because we did get a couple of greasy fingerprints on it. After you put the rotor on and you get the brakes done and this side is totally finished, you're going to go back in through your head and you're going to make sure that you tightened everything up properly. The two Phillips head screws are tight in here. They're both tight, so we know that's good. We put our mounting bracket on. We tightened up both 17 millimeters. And if you're not sure, go back and check them again just to make sure. But we tightened up both 17 millimeters there. We installed our new hardware, which came with the brake pads. If the brake pads don't have it, buy yourself a hardware kit. Very important that you change that, because usually when brakes wear down, it's because the hardware is worn out. Okay, so we put the new hardware on. We lubricated underneath the hardware kit where it connects into the mounting bracket, and we lubricated where the brake pads connect into the other portion of the mounting hardware. All right, now we have that lubricated. We put our piston, pushed our piston back in. We lubricated the piston there, and we lubricated both here where the brake pad is going to touch the outer part of the caliper, and then we tightened up our 14 millimeter here and here. So this side is finished and ready to go. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other side, and we're going to wrap this job up and get it out the door. I'm not going to film the other side because it's basically a duplication of what you saw going on right here. I will tell you this, when you get in the car and you step on the brake, it is normal for your brake pedal to go right to the floor. Don't freak out, it's not a big deal. What's happening is the piston that you previously pushed in, you remember how this moved back and forth? That piston now is pushed all the way back into the bore. When you get in the car and you pump the pedal, the fluid coming from where your foot is in the master cylinder, it pushes fluid in here and pushes that piston out a little bit each time. So after 3 or 4 pumps, the brake piston is going to push out. It's going to touch into the back of the new brake pad, and it's going to be a nice firm pedal. But that's it, you're done. All right, I will tell you this, you will also possibly get a little bit of smoke or a little bit of burning smell off of here. Nothing to worry about, it'll burn off and it'll be gone within a short period of time. That's it, this job is done. Once the side is finished here, we'll take it for a road test, make sure it's okay, and then it's off and on to the next one. All right, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.